Welcome, Autobots and Decepticons. I am Matthew Flynn, the Gladiator of Kaon. My guests will be here soon, but while we wait for them, I thought that to stall for time, we'll just talk about Season 1 a little bit and what we think of it, because we did miss some of the episodes near the end of Season 1, which we'll talk about with Troy and Annette. We will talk with them about those episodes we missed. So I thought I may as well just chat or talk to the chat about the first season overall. Now, my favorite episode, well, season 1 at least, is definitely the final episode, Secrets, along with a couple others throughout, specifically like side effects and small problems, because those episodes add a little bit to the universe. They kind of shake up the formula a little bit, and also I like side effects just because that episode gave us they specifically gave us the blue heat blast who has ice powers instead of fire. But that's more of an aesthetic thing for me personally. I think that's mostly the only reason people like that episode, is because of Heat Blast shooting ice. Oh, yeah, I do like Ghost Freak and Kevin 11 as well, Melissa. I'm assuming you're referring to The Last Laugh, which that is definitely a great episode as well. I mean, the foreshadowing for Ghost Freak isn't just in that episode, it's in every episode that he turns into Ghost Freak. It's just they don't go overt with the foreshadowing, they keep it very subtle. After you've watched season 2, if you then go back and watch season 1, you'll then notice the foreshadowing a little easier. I definitely think they should have gone a little more overt with the foreshadowing of there. I also really do like Kevin 11, especially what happens during season 2, but we're not going to talk about that until Ninette and Troy get here. If they even do get here. We'll wait and see. I also really like Alliance, specifically because it just adds a little minor difference to the normal, well, not the formula, but like the way Vilgax sends out drones to retrieve the Omnitrix. Instead of like hiring more bounty hunters, he instead just sends out a more advanced drone that then bonds with the random human who's robbing an armored truck. I will be using, like, open up Google and showing images for the different episodes as we talk, because I've noticed when I do that, those specific streams get more views and get slightly more attention. I don't know if that's the reason for that. What else is there? Does anyone have a specific alien from season 1 they like out of the original 10? My personal favorite is Forearms and Upgrade. I don't know if I know that a lot of the marketing material focused primarily on Heat Blast, which, now I think about it, the later shows also have some form of fire-based alien that's the focus of the marketing material. That's not part of season 1, Nanette. That's part of season 2. We'll get to that. Welcome, Troy.
Why am I not hearing anything?
Oh, you're really quiet.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Yes, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right.
I don't see the
Let
one.
me welcome Troy Pacelli, also known as Carton the Klingon Cleric.
Also known as Troy the Tired. This is what happens when you do this to me on daylight savings time. I said I lost an hour already, and then I get up in time for your thing, and it's an hour later that you're doing it. So
Yeah, I looked it up. I have figured out why the confusion has happened. We do have a daylight saving, just not today. It's in like 2 weeks from now for us.
Okay. Yeah. So let's do our best here. So I'm here.
Oh, welcome, Nanette.
Netter's here.
Hello. Yeah, this daylight savings time thing just no.
Yeah. So I
I
figured
guess
you
we can
got.
call that my mortal enemy, time zones.
Yeah, exactly. Which has always been the struggle for us anyway, because we've got hours between us. It's late in the evening there. It's morning here. So
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, let's see what we can accomplish today. Let's not make it a 4-hour stream. Let's not spend 20 minutes on each episode. Okay.
Yeah. Especially since we've got to quickly go through the last few episodes of season 1 because we missed them.
Yep. So we got the wrap up of season 1 with the revelation that Max was when he was a younger man in some sort of a Men in Black type of organization, investigating the paranormal and the aliens and the whole whatnot. Something called a plumber. And so when he was finding out about this sort of thing, it wasn't a huge shock to him. And so he did know more than he was letting on. So we got a little bit of revelation about the behind the scenes, the fact that Max knew evil Cthulhu face guy from before and had tangled with him. So, and that's where we left off at the end of season 1.
Yep, with them believing that they have finally defeated Vilgax for the second time, I would imagine.
Right.
I know at the start of season 2, we then get the proper history of the plumbers and Max's job. And also we obviously see him defeat Vilgax. And I think even then, that wasn't even like the first time he met him. I think that was after a couple of fights that we didn't see.
Right, exactly. And we have an episode this season where we get to meet one of his old plumber buddies who's kind of turned to the dark side a bit. And I'll tell you what, I think my favorite episode so far, we get an episode where we see history kind of take an alternate path, and we see what would have happened had it been Gwen 10 instead of Ben 10.
Yep, that would be the What If episodes. There's only 2 of them in this show, or this first show.
Was a little bit consternating because it's not just it sets it up with the bookends of the narrator saying, sometimes there's a different way to tell a story, which is a commentary on exactly what's happening. It's a what if story. So we're going to tell a story as a what if. What if it had taken a different path? Okay. And they did that very well. But they also use an additional framing method where Ben is aware that history is taking a different course, that he is basically somehow rewound time and re-experiencing these events with the knowledge of the previous iteration of it. And then when we get to the end of the episode, there's no resolution on that. I mean, there is really no explanation for why he was able to remember the alternate history, if everything is reset for him, if he remembers the events from this episode. I was really lost on that.
I like your choice of icon. It's actually funny that's not an image from the original series. That's the image from the sequel series.
Yeah.
It's the only one I could find.
No, he's talking
yours.
to me.
Yeah, for mine, it's the only one I could find of her kind of smiling.
I did point out, she said, every picture I find of her, she's grimacing. I'm like, yep, that's pretty much the character, right? I mean, she is not a happy character for most of the show. The only time you see her smiling, she's on her computer. I'm like, that's a commentary on the character, I think.
Do you have a favorite alien from season 1? Or of his original 10 aliens?
That's a
I like the fire one.
Heat Blast. The very first alien we see.
You kind of realize throughout the first season that not only does he take on the shape and abilities of these characters, but he gets a little bit of personality difference from them too, right? So and they expound on that a little bit more in season 2. But so in evaluating them, you're not just talking about what they look like and what their power sets are. Yeah. There's a personality that you take into account too when you answer that question. And I would have to say,
yeah.
I don't know. I feel like, and I forget their names. The no-eyed dog character seems to be kind of bestial, and
Wildman.
And the little gray guy is clever techie, right?
Yeah. Oh, what's the cute little one?
Yeah,
is that the one?
What's his name?
Greymouth.
Greymouth. Okay,
He's
yeah,
so cute.
Yeah, he is adorable. The crystal dude seems to have a certain amount of nobility to him. I think I'd probably go with him.
Yeah. One thing that I keep noticing when I'm watching it, when Ben's one of the taller aliens, like Four Arms or Diamond Head, sometimes I tend to forget that he's a 10-year-old kid, because sometimes he doesn't act like that.
Right.
Plus the voice is deeper.
Right. Yeah. It's a different voice too. And yes. And I also thought it was interesting because in that alternate episode, you see what's the watch called again?
The Omnitrix.
The Omnitrix. We see Gwen use it, but we also see Max use it. And they all have different voices when they're in the different characters. They've done a great job with that. So you get the impression that these characters that they become are some sort of a blending of whatever the character is in the watch and their own personalities,
Yeah.
Which I find incredibly interesting. I'm sure there'll be a lot more lore that comes out, but
yeah.
I mean, and then the one they've used the least, so I have therefore found the least interesting, although he's got a great expounding arc in the second one is the ghost figure.
Yeah, Ghost Freak.
Ghost Freak. Yeah, definitely strong personality. That's the one that Ben comments on the most about how he, senses a difference, and how he feels different when he's this character. And they really play that up much more in the
in the second season.
Yeah.
I have also noticed that season 2 is when they actually start giving names to the different species of aliens. Like we hear one character call Four Arms a Tetramand, and then we call in the first episode of season 2, we hear the species for Wildmount, which is Vulpamancer, and we see 2 older Vulpamancers as well.
So, am I correct that, because we're kind of seeing it from Ben's point of view, and he's as lost as we are, so we know what he knows, and he speculates and he, whatever. But I get the distinct impression that that's not how the Omnitrix is supposed to work. He's not supposed to be as confused as he is. It's like he's supposed to get more information from these different characters in the Watch than he actually is getting.
Yeah, there's a lot of features about the Omnitrix that come up in later shows that kind of clarifies things. That's like, it's kind of a case of later on they add information that wasn't necessarily present in this original show, but technically is correct.
Like wasn't there an episode that goes into that explains that the whole idea was this thing was meant to be used in conjunction with a whole bunch of others to make an army of these soldiers with these abilities for Cthulhu face?
Yeah, Vilgax. That's not necessarily the purpose of the Omnitrix. That's rather what he wants to do with it.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, because he wants to conquer the universe. And he wants to. I think he either wants to replicate the Omnitrix or maybe have it like attached to a bunch of like drones or something, and have them all be like the ones that transform and are like under his command.
Gotcha. Yeah, and so and you did mention, and we've seen that a little bit first season, more in the second season, that these individuals with these characters he turns into are representatives of different alien races, and those alien races are part of some kind of galactic, I don't know, federation or something like that. Yeah, right, exactly. So as you see more interaction with the space characters, you see more representatives of those races.
Yeah, I like Ben's quick thinking in the first episode when he first sees the 2 other older Wolfmancers, and he recognizes them what they are, and then turns into Wildmutt to try and talk to them.
Yeah,
and then obviously the Wolfmancers attack him because Grandmax points out that they weren't very big on small talk, even with their own kind.
Yeah,
they drool a lot.
Yeah, they drool.
This is the first episode that introduces the null void projector, which is, I believe it gets some explanation in this episode. Obviously, we will see it again in later episodes. It's I think somewhere it's described as being a pocket dimension, and then other times it's described as just another dimension in general.
Kind of like the Phantom Zone for Superman.
Yeah, I believe that was there. I believe they were probably going for that. Although I'd imagine it would be kind of hard to have any kind of alternate dimension prison and not immediately think of the Phantom Zone with Superman.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I have also noted the whole Men in Black connection with the plumbers. That was one thing that I immediately noticed. Actually, more so after seeing all 3 Men in Black movies.
I mean, obviously there's going to be some pastiche or inspiration or whatever you want to say, but it's really hard to be too critical of the show for drawing on those things, because it's not just drawing from these specific instances. It's not like they're copying, the Phantom Zone from Superman or the Men in Black from the Men in Black. These are tropes that really predate those things. So they're actually drawing from folklore that goes back to the beginning of storytelling, right? This idea of a phantom zone, this idea of a netherworld that you can be banished to. That's part of religion going back to, you know, the beginning of humanity. And, you know, this concept of the men in black actually has its ties in folklore as well. This idea of the other, the observer, the lurker in the woods, so to speak. You know, that has its origin in fairy lore that has been sort of co-opted in the modern day with aliens and the men in black and what it's evolved into. So it's kind of hard to say one thing is you know, copying or drawing from the other. It's almost become a gestalt sort of archetype in and of itself.
I've also noted for episode 1 that it doesn't exactly seem right to just leave Phil in the Noah Void after they've defeated him. Doesn't quite seem right to just strand him in there.
Mm-hmm.
Especially since Max does mention there possibly being at least thousands of different aliens trapped in there.
What I never understood was why it only lasts for a little bit and then he turns back into human.
Yeah, what's the deal with the time limit? And
well,
why does it seem so inconsistent too?
Well, when it transforms into the wrong alien when he chooses one alien.
I wasn't even referring to that. I was saying whenever he transforms at all, it seems to be obviously it's plot point. You know, they need him to turn back now, so he turns back now. He doesn't really get a say in it, or at least initially he doesn't. And it seems to be random how long it lasts. It lasts as long as the story needs him to. You know?
I believe. Well, for an explanation for that, I'm going to have to pull from later shows because this original series doesn't necessarily answer everything, and the later shows add details. Well, for him turning back, I think somewhere it is mentioned that it's a 10-minute time limit, although obviously with the episodes it kind of messes with the sense of time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's a 10-minute time limit because it's a fail-safe to prevent Ben's human DNA from being mutated by transforming into a different alien.
That makes sense.
Although I'm pretty sure this show doesn't actually give that explanation. It doesn't say anything at all, but one of the later shows does mention that somewhere. And there's also a whole bunch of other fail-safes, some of which we see in this show and then some we see later. Although that can be explained away by the fact that this Omnitrix is a prototype, and later on Ben's using either the same Omnitrix that's been recalibrated or just a different device entirely. And then obviously later on when he gets to the finished official Omnitrix, that one has like its own set of fail safes and a few corrections to some issues that crop up here in the original show and also in the sequel show.
So we get from the ghostly figure that there is a distinct, specific personality for that alien in the Omnitrix that wants to assert its dominance, that wants to take over or escape from him. Am I to believe that every alien that's in the Watch has a specific personality? In other words, it's an alien trapped in the Watch?
No, that's only Ghost Freak. Yeah, all the other aliens, they're not. Yeah, they're not sentient. It's because it's specific to the way Ghost Freak species function. Because as Ghost Freak explains later in season 2, that every strand of ectoneurite DNA contains their mind and personality. So when he transforms into Ghost Freak, he's turning into like a part of the real Ghost Freak. So when he separates himself from the Watch, he's then not really the full ghost freak, because the real one is somewhere out in the universe.
I see.
So that's like specific to ectonorites,
And
not
that's-
necessarily every species.
And that's not true for the other aliens. Those aliens are just literally a bit of their DNA is in there, and it transforms him into a physical representation of that race.
Yeah. And also, I believe the Omnitrix is supposed to download all the instincts and all the knowledge that the person requires into their brain when he transforms into them, but it doesn't work here for whatever reason.
Gotcha.
I believe that's because it's a prototype.
Now that one, I feel like definitely references or implies the overall conceit of the show, The Greatest American Hero, where the hero receives his superpower device from some aliens with an instruction book, and then promptly loses the instruction book. So he literally has to blunder along figuring out how to use his powers.
I have not seen that show, so I can't really speak to whether the show writers actually intended that or not.
I'd be surprised if there wasn't at least a little bit of influence there.
Yeah. So for episode 2, The Big Tick, this one introduces a new alien, which is Cannonbolt. And obviously this clearly shows the whole that he doesn't know how to work the aliens, because he's trying to figure out what kind of Cannonbolt does. And also he does a reference to Spider-Man 1, I think it was. He was doing all these different hand gestures to figure out what he does. I think he does the exact same hand gestures that Peter Parker does in the first Spider-Man movie when he's trying to figure out how to shoot his webs.
It does seem like a pretty lame power set. He literally just turns into a bowling ball.
But he is on
yeah, but he can smash through stuff.
Well, true.
And deflect laser blasts.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's specific to the kind of laser blasts that are being fired at him, or if it's just any laser blasts.
I mean, I'm not saying it's not without value. It's just so does that still fall within the limit of the 10?
By this point, what do you mean, like a 10-minute time
No,
limit,
no.
or do you mean the actual aliens?
I meant the number of aliens in the watch.
Well, there's countless number of aliens in the Omnitrix that Ben can unlock.
I didn't realize that. Okay.
Yeah, I got the impression Ben 10 was referring to his age.
I'm sure there's that too. There's the 10-minute.
I think it did come from the 10 aliens, because obviously in the first season he only had 10 aliens.
10 aliens, 10 minutes. He's a 10-year-old boy, and his name is Ben Tennyson.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the initial idea when they were writing the first season.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I know one thing that's brought up when it comes to Cannonball and other new aliens that Ben turns into is how he turned into them or how he unlocked them. The show doesn't actually give an answer, although I like to think that it's a specific combination that he puts in that unlocks the new aliens. Because obviously when Ben turns into Cannonball, he's trying to turn it, and also Gwen's also trying to turn it as well. And I'm pretty sure they're not doing the same thing.
Right.
So again, they probably accidentally put in a combination that unlocks Cannonball. Well, the show doesn't directly answer that question; it just kind of leaves it vague.
Sure.
Or it could also be the fact that the big tick of the actual episode name is the reason that he transforms into Cannonball, because that's happened before, where he turns into an alien based on something that's around him or near him.
Right. Right. That whole idea that he may be going for one alien and find himself instead turning into a different one, not the one he had originally chosen, as if the Omnitrix has a mind of its own.
Yeah, because when the big tick crashes on Earth, and the ticks heralds, I suppose you could call them. They even directly say the name of the species that Cannonball is a part of, and also mention that the tick already destroyed the home planet of that species like a month ago. So it could also say that like kind of connection is the reason he turned into Cannonball, because this thing destroyed the home planet of the species that he's turned into.
Yeah.
Well, that is just a theory rather than a concrete answer.
Right, but it does have a certain poetic justice to it, you know, like that race gets its revenge somehow.
Yeah.
You know.
I've also noted that the tick himself, he has the same color scheme as Galactus from Marvel Comics.
Probably a nod to that.
Yeah, because the tick itself destroys and then devours the different planets, and has heralds that actually we don't see if they lead him here or if they just follow him, because they only appear after the tick has already crashed on the planet.
You distinctly get the impression that they are somehow held captive by the entity, right? Because
they mentioned that he already destroyed their home planets.
Right, and you know, they clearly don't want to, because they're pleased and glad when he's destroyed. So it does have the implication of somehow being freed from him.
I didn't get that impression from them, because they were screaming in terror when Cannonball was about to destroy the tick, and then after he was already destroyed, they were. I didn't really see it as them like celebrating his defeat, but rather recognizing that Ben had destroyed the big tick, and now
So you're
he
thinking
is,
they're
like,
more like religious zealots.
Yeah, because like Ben has like proved himself worthy of their service or something like that.
Gotcha.
But by defeating their previous masters, or at least that's how I interpreted.
No, I could
at
see
the
that
end.
too. Sure.
That's how
And
I
then
see
when
the flame one is kind of like a nod to the Human Torch.
Yeah, I get a
I
Human
can
Torch
see that.
vibe, or even Firestorm. Yeah.
Yeah, although Firestorm's powers aren't necessarily fire; they're more of
An atomic kind of
because he can transform objects into something else of, I think, equal size and weight, I believe. And Heat Blast obviously can't do that.
Yeah.
Although we do get multiple instances of him turning to a firestorm and then just not being there, and like an object going through the firestorm and not hitting him at all.
Right.
Maybe he has like a very specific control of fire, or more unique fire-based powers at least.
Yeah, and we also get a few more callbacks to characters introduced in the first season. We get the I don't know what you call them, the Insane Clown Posse.
Oh yeah, the circus freaks.
Yep, and we also get, what was his name? Kevin.
Yeah, Kevin 11.
Kevin 11. Right.
Which is a bit on the nose because his surname is Levin and his middle name is Ethan.
Mm-hmm.
So you would literally get Kevin E11.
Yeah,
it's a bit on the nose, but
sure.
That's his buddy that turned into all the freaks.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, Netter, I don't think saw the first episode. They meet a kid who has a certain amount of parasitic abilities. He can absorb electricity and shoot it back at you. Yeah. And in Ben's case, he takes some of the power of the Omnitrix.
Yeah.
And surprisingly, he's able to maintain it indefinitely. Now, after what you've actually said to me, I realize it's probably because the Omnitrix is what actually sets a limit on those abilities. Without him having access to those, power through the Omnitrix, he doesn't have that limit. But then again, he also probably doesn't have the control to be able to maintain just one alien at a time, which is why he ends up the way he does.
And no way to change back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the contrast in episode Framed when we see Kevin again, because Ben is a kid who turns into multiple aliens and stays those aliens for a limited amount of time. And then Kevin's the exact opposite. He started out as a kid, or as a young kid, but now he's stuck as multiple aliens and can only swap between them, but can only remain a small kid for a limited amount of time.
Right.
I like that, like contrast between the two of them.
Yeah, very much like a Bizarro Superman sort of thing, where everything's opposite.
Yeah. I also noticed that during the episode Framed, when we see Kevin as one of the aliens, there's no Omnitrix faceplate on him. So I feel like the characters probably should have noticed that detail.
Right.
Because Gwen very quickly assumes that Ben's the one who's doing all this.
Right.
And
well,
Ben,
and you know that it's at least partly because Gwen is always prepared to assume the worst of Ben, because she has a certain amount of contempt for him, whereas Max always wants to assume the best of Ben, but also has a bit of a Occam's razor kind of mentality. Well, there's an alien, it must be Ben, because where else would an alien come from?
Yeah, because when Ben actually brings up the point of the aliens he turns into are all like species that live out in the universe somewhere, that obviously like helps bring Max to his side a little bit. Although Gwen kind of doesn't necessarily just drop the vendetta, but she does sort of continue it a little bit.
Well, and there's also the fact that, I mean, they've already seen at least one other alien that was one of the aliens he turns into, and that's the crystal.
Yeah, Tetrax.
Tetrax, right. So it's like, well, no, I'm not alone in the universe in this form.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we also encounter like a Justice League of sorts of a number of aliens, one of which is a female version of Forearms.
Yeah. I also like in the episode Framed when was it Lieutenant Steele is like hunting the different aliens, because obviously Kevin's been doing all sorts of stuff all over America, and while he's pretending to be Ben, and then Lieutenant Steele chases Ben thinking it's Kevin, but he doesn't know that Kevin, he doesn't, I don't think he knows anything about whether it's Kevin or Ben as the specific alien.
Right. All he knows is that there's an alien going around, causing havoc that he's trying to apprehend. He may even assume that since it's different forms, it's different aliens. So he's assuming all aliens bad.
Yeah.
And through this episode, he starts to get, okay, there's different aliens, different individuals, different factions, and not all of them are against us.
Yeah. Because he even says to Ben when he's like he grabs the Omnitrix and says, "Is this how you call the aliens?"
Yeah,
I think he calls it like a locating device or something.
Right.
Or he assumes that's what it is.
Completely not understanding the idea that no, the alien actually is Ben.
Yeah. And also I like that when he asks Ben where he got the watch, his response is that it's from Japan. I do find that funny.
Yeah.
And I also like the when Kevin is on the Golden Gate Bridge and he starts fighting Lieutenant Steele, and then Ben comes in as Forearms and fights him and then defeats him. And when he turns back into his normal human form, and Ben just like walks away on him, and then he turns into like I think the best way to describe it is some kind of like Frankenstein's-esque monster form. Because he's got like all 10 of the aliens or alien powers that he has, they're all represented somewhere on him. Like he's got the overall body shape of 4 arms. One arm is Diamond Head, the other arm is Heat Blast. He's got Accelerate's tail, Stinkfly's wings, and also Rip Jaws is like mouth and jaws, and then the antenna on his head. I think it's Ghost Freak on his chest. Actually, you know what? I'll just bring up an image. I'll make it easier. I think in this form he uses pretty much all 10 of the powers that he has, because we see him use the diamond head arm to shoot what I want to call them diamonds, because I'm pretty sure that's not what they are, but he shoots like shards out of one arm, shoots fire from the other arm. He uses rip jaws to like bite into like a robot, and obviously accelerates super speed and then stink flies wings to fly around. I think the only ones he never actually uses is Grey Matter, Ghost Freak, and Upgrade. Like we see all three of those three aliens present on his like his form, because he has the Ghost Freak lines on his chest and then Upgrade on his back, or like an upgraded look texture on his back. I feel like that was probably a missed opportunity for him to actually use all 10 powers in that form.
We also see that that Kevin and Ben end up in a kind of gladiatorial ring, fighting other aliens. Again, you can reference Superman, Warworld,
definitely Star Trek. I'm pretty sure a few episodes have
sure Star Trek and the Gamesters of Triskelion.
I think there's at least 2 episodes of the original series that have this exact plot set up.
Exactly. So yeah, this is a pretty common even Thor Ragnarok. No, it wasn't Ragnarok. Which one was it? The one with him and Hulk.
No, yeah, that was Ragnarok.
That was Ragnarok? Okay, yeah. So
okay, I'm gonna bring up Google. Sadly, because Google is Google, I can't prevent you from seeing images related to later seasons and then later shows in general. Okay, that is not what I wanted. What is that? Okay, good, that is visible. So, this one.
Yeah.
If I bring this over here, make that a lot easier. Okay, so yeah, so you got Grey Matter's eye right there, and yes, you have. I think the only powers we actually see him use primarily is accelerates super speed, stink flies wings so he can fly, and then Diamond Head and Heat Blast his powers.
He does seem to have a certain two-dimensionality to his thought process, right? Because he doesn't even conceptualize the idea of using these powers together until Ben points it out to him. He's like, look, you could do 2 things at once.
Which is another instance of Ben clearly being smarter than the other characters think he is.
Yeah, exactly.
And technically his advice could technically be like helpful to himself as well. Well, although they'll be more helpful later in the final episode.
Right. As later on, he does learn that he can apparently change which alien he is within that 10-minute span.
Yeah, later on in the final episode when he's messing with the Omnitrix and he discovers Master Control, and that allows him to be any alien he wants for however long he wants. And also, we also see Ben obviously change between aliens without being in human form first.
Yeah.
Which I believe Master Control, I don't know if that was that's a feature that was intended from the beginning, or if that was something that was added later on. Well, then now it raises a question. If Ben was messing with the Omnitrix all through season 1, he might have accidentally come across Master Control then.
Well, I got the impression there was another factor involved, and that was like an energy blast that he got, while he was hooked up to the ship.
Oh yeah, during during the episode Secrets. Yeah,
Yeah.
because an energy discharge hits Ben and and like causes him to start randomly switching between aliens.
Right.
I think that was more of a glitch or like an external force messing with the Omnitrix rather than an actual feature.
Gotcha.
Although in terms of the show, it does kind of hint at what comes later. What else? Oh yeah, and the episode Gwen 10. Obviously, that's not. It takes place in between Framed and Grudge Match, but it doesn't. It doesn't chronologically take place in between them. I think we can just assume that Framed and Grudge Match takes place one after the other, and Gwen 10's kind of a side thing rather than actually being in the middle.
It does seem to be, a what if. It's taking place in an alternate timeline almost.
Yeah.
But again, I still can't understand the whole idea of Ben being aware of it being an alternate timeline and basically reliving it, and then that not having any restorative, back to the original narrative.
I believe the Ben in that episode, from what I've heard, apparently that Ben is not the same Ben that we've been watching throughout the show, but rather that's a different Ben from a different timeline who's experienced everything that's happened up until that episode, and it's like that Ben that's been sent back in time. Although considering right from the very beginning of the episode, when we see shots that have no relation to Ben and Gwen, already events are happening slightly different already.
Well, I felt that they did a great job of recontextualizing the events that had happened and how they would have been different if, Ben and Max and Gwen took a different path, right?
Yeah.
So there are certain things that are happening regardless of Ben that only intersect with Ben when he shows up and whatnot. So those things are going to happen. A lot of shows do that. We see that with Doctor Who and Left Turn and stuff like that. Is a great example of that. And you realize certain events would play out very differently if the main character never got involved in it, right? Never had an impact on it. So, you could definitely see that. So the only way I can conceptualize the Gwen 10 episode is Ben somehow gets a burst of insight of all the events that we've seen so far.
Yeah.
Imagines that he's lived that life, even though he hasn't. He just has the memories.
Yeah.
And now he's going through life again.
Now, for the Gwen 10 episode, since there's a couple times where Ben was like, yeah, that didn't work when I tried it either, he should have been telling her, for this, you're going to do this. For this, you want to do this. But he wasn't really doing that. Although there were a couple of times when she's like, what do I do? And he's like, okay, try this.
Yeah.
But I think he should have been coaching her all along. I know what you need to do. You need to do this. This is going to work. And it would have saved a lot of time and pain.
Right.
Yeah. And there's also the moment where Ben does be a bit of a dick and he turns Gwen into grey matter just so we can watch her run in terror from a raccoon.
Right.
That's like him using his knowledge, probably for, I suppose you could call it for his own benefit, I suppose.
Well, he was jealous. And it's like, this is supposed to be my power. How come she has it? It's not
Yeah.
supposed to happen this way.
And also later on, we do get Ben admit that Gwen's better with it than him. Although I feel like because of the way he says it, I don't think it's necessarily like a Supergirl season 2, like Superman type of moment where like he's admitting that she's better. It doesn't necessarily sound like that because Ben doesn't really. It's not a case where he learns that she's better and like then he admits it. He just kind of sound down about that.
Yeah,
he doesn't want to admit that that's right, but he's also having to recognize that.
And I don't feel like it even carries with it the whole, poli-sci situation there, right? It's not just because she's a girl. I mean, the fact that she's a girl, she has a different perspective. She's also older than he is. At least that's the impression that I get.
They're the same age.
Are they the same age? Okay, she's
they're both born on the same day.
But she does seem to have a little bit more maturity than he does.
Yeah, remember the episode where they're arguing about when they're going to celebrate the birthdays?
Sharing a birthday, right. But it doesn't have to have. It's not just gender, right? I mean, it's gender means they have different perspectives, right? They have different life experience. They have different personalities. He's more into boy things. She's more into computers. So they're going to attack all problems from a very different point of view. But another thing that you get is they both bring a benefit to the situation too. That's why she's a big help to him when he has the Omnitrix, and he is able to be a help to her when she has the Omnitrix. Basically, they make a good team.
Yeah. And also at the end when the energy blast hits Gwen and she starts spinning, and then the Omnitrix comes off her arm, and Ben like tries reaching for it, but then it goes past him and attaches to Grandpa Max instead.
Mm-hmm.
Although the only alien we see him turn into is Upgrade. Although that's probably because whatever alien he turns into will be the same age as him, and it probably won't look as impressive if we see like a very old version of one of the aliens.
That's a good point. Yeah,
because Upgrade's the only one that doesn't really look any older or younger, regardless of the age of the person who's turned into him. Well, that's probably because Upgrade is living metal, so there's maybe he could look like a little rusted, but that's probably about as close as he could probably get.
Right.
If living metal even can rust.
Exactly. I get the distinct impression that that race is probably some sort of an intelligent AI, and so maybe physical aging isn't even a concept for them.
Yeah, because Upgrades, he's not even like a full. I think that they're called galvanic mechamorphs. But Upgrade's an incomplete galvanic mechamorph. He's not a full one. Because a full galvanic mechamorph can, when it attaches to something and upgrades something, when it then detaches, it can then retain that form, so it can then transform into that again. Whereas whenever Upgrade upgrades something, when he detaches, he can't then morph into that.
Or Ben just hasn't learned that ability yet.
Yeah, I suppose that is one, but the original show never really does anything with that. So now
probably no need. He's got so many other forms. There's no sense expanding the abilities of any one given form.
Yeah. And now for a grudge match, where we see Kevin again. Obviously still stuck in his mutant Frankenstein form, or Frankenstein's monster form. And obviously they get like, before they get pulled away to the ship, to a gladiator arena ship, there is one thing I noted, that Kevin, because while he has all 10 of Ben's powers, he had Ben notes that they're only like a tenth as strong as the original powers are that Ben can turn into.
Mm-hmm.
And that's obviously why Ben suggests combining the powers, because it makes up for them being not as strong as the real thing.
No, I don't remember what episode it was, and they're all kind of starting to ride together. But the one where him and his friend 11 were chained together, and it's like if you try to remove it, you'll both die. Da da da.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I
that's
wanna
this
know-
match. That's this episode, Grudge
Yeah.
match.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why Ben just didn't turn into Ghost Dude and go through it. He's not removing it; he would be phasing through it.
Well, didn't
No, I
he
have no
lose
idea
the-
why that's. I think that's
Did he
just like
lose
a
Ghost
case
Freak?
of them. What?
I mean, is Ghost Freak still an option for him?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
At that
he
point, it
doesn't-
was.
Okay.
Yeah, Ghost Freak doesn't separate from the Onyx until like the third episode from the last, like a lot later in the season.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah,
this
we're still
reminds
early.
me of times when like Troy was putting together a D&D campaign, and he's like, okay, this is what I'm planning to do. Think of any way that they can defeat this thing,
Mhm.
because I want to try and block
Counter
whatever
that,
they might be
yeah.
able to do. And it's like, well, they could do this or they could do this. So I think the writers just didn't think about, oh, he can turn into a ghost guy and just phase through it,
Right.
or they chose not to.
Yeah. It could be either option or both. Because I have also noted that this is literally the plot of a Star Trek: The Original Series episode,
Mhm.
where we already talked about, so we don't need to
Right.
go into that. I've also put Kevin's a dick because in this episode he definitely is. Because like when he's chained to Ben, Kevin just starts running around and lets Ben just scrape his butt along the floor. And then like when they stops, he's like, "Oh, did that hurt?"
Yeah.
Yeah, and and then obviously Ben suggested him like combining the powers, and also when they defeat Technorg, I believe is his name.
Mhm.
When they defeat him, and then the guy controlling the ship, I think his name was Slick Figma, I think was how his name was pronounced. But yeah, he like tells them to finish off their opponent, and obviously Kevin's all too happy to, but because Ben's a hero, he like pulls at the restraint on them
Mhm.
and gets Kevin to then stop and attack him instead. Which I definitely like that small moment there. Although I have noticed that this episode has a distinct lack of Ben being a little more arrogant than in previous episodes. That's kind of very much lacking in this episode. Because in this episode he's very much all about trying to get off of the ship or helping him and Kevin survive this place. I think he only like gloats like a little bit later on when he trips Technorg over onto Kevin.
Well, there also seems to be, and this could just be a symptom of the fact that Ben is our hero character. We see a great deal of growth in Ben up to this point, right? Whereas it seems like Kevin, it's like this kid can't be taught, It's like trying to get anything through to him is like pulling teeth.
Yeah.
Because he's stubborn.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a kid. He's stubborn.
Well, but Ben's a kid too, and it has more to do with personality than age.
Yeah, Kevin has lived on the streets by himself.
Mm-hmm.
Not quite sure how long exactly, but definitely a year or two at least.
Mm-hmm.
And also his parents, or from his point of view at least, his parents considered him to be a freak.
Yeah.
And obviously we never saw what his parents' perspective or what they thought of him or anything.
And he just seems to have a lack of imagination, right? He can
Yeah.
only see a very narrow, like he's got binders on, whereas Ben tends to think outside the box and, be a little bit more imaginative and sees things from different points of view, and therefore receives all of the insight that comes with that.
Yeah. And then let me just bring this back up. You have this at the beginning when he's fighting this robot, and like you see Ben running, or before Ben turns back, he's like more focused on defending himself from the thing than actually destroying it.
Mm-hmm.
But then when we see Kevin also fighting the same type of a robot, he's not like trying to defend himself at all. He's just straight up attacking the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he hears the crowd cheering him on, he like starts like a boost to his ego, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Although one thing I noticed with the crowd, I am kind of curious if how they're exactly here, because this is a ship
Mm-hmm.
flying through different galaxies, kidnapping aliens to fight in the arena. I'm just thinking, is the crowd taken hostage or something? Are they forced to be on this ship basically
So
24/7?
what are the possibilities? Yes, they could be hostages and they're forced to watch this. They could be passengers. This could be like a passenger liner, and this is the entertainment for them. Are they physically there? Are they just there as projections of individuals that are somewhere else just watching in their living rooms or whatever?
Yeah, because the episode never really clarifies that. All we
Right.
see is the crowd cheering when they're in the arena,
Mm-hmm.
and then from the ship, we learn that the ship transports itself from galaxy to galaxy. We never learn anything about whether it stops anywhere.
And that was the impression that I got, that it was the second, that this is some sort of a passenger liner, like a cruise ship, and these people are there because they enjoy this. It's a paid vacation for them or whatever, and therefore this entity that controls the ship is providing a service to them. That's his purpose.
Yeah. And also, like at the end, near the end of the episode, when Ben has turned into Upgrade and like taken over the guy controlling the ship, who is revealed is actually a robot, and that's how he's controlling the ship and also seeing everything on the ship as well. And then he like uses while he's like merged with him, he uses that to transport all of the prisoners to the escape pods, and then obviously allows them to then take escape pods back to wherever they came from.
Mm-hmm.
And I do find it funny when we get there, we see Kevin is just I don't even know if he's even trying to open the door. He's just punching the doors repeatedly. I don't think he even like knows how to properly open those doors. I think or maybe he does, and he's just wanted to punch them.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like either option is probably very likely with Kevin.
True.
And also when when it's just Ben and Kevin in the escape pod room, and he's stuck Ben to the wall with the stink fly goop or whatever that stuff is.
Mm-hmm.
And he turns into Cannonbolt, and then defeats Kevin as Cannonbolt, specifically because he's never seen this alien before. Obviously, Ben unlocked this alien after Kevin had already absorbed energy from the Omnitrix.
Right.
I believe that's a case of he could only absorb the DNA that Ben had access to, rather than just the DNA in the Omnitrix.
Right.
Yeah, that. I have noticed that Cannonball in these early appearances, his size tends to change. I don't know if that's like part of his power, or if that's just an animation error.
I think it's an animation error.
Yeah, I agree, but until we actually see something acknowledge it one way or the other, you can't really say.
Yeah, because there are definitely multiple instances when Cannonbolt's standing up and he's like the size of an adult or possibly taller, and then other times when he turns into a ball, he's like very small.
Mhm.
Yeah, like this image here. He definitely looks smaller than he probably should be here. So, was there anything else you want to add about this episode?
Nope.
Okay, let's move on to the next episode. I'll do
Other
this.
than perhaps to say that it does set Kevin up for yet another appearance later on. We think that he's gone, again.
Oh yeah,
Permanently, but not.
when the Ben's put in the escape pod and then the
Mhm.
ship goes into hyperspace. And we also see because Technorg helps Ben out, and then we're just left to assume that Kevin fights Technorg again.
Mhm.
And like I said, next episode is the Galactic Enforcers.
Yep.
Which, as you've already pointed out, is more than likely a pastiche of the Justice League.
Exactly.
I mean, they have their own Superman, so because Ultimos is very literally just Superman, but doesn't exactly look like Superman.
Right.
And has a different name because he physically looks like Superman. He's got the logo on his chest, a cape. He's got, I don't want to say all of Superman's powers, because all we see is heat vision and then the wind breath, or whatever it's called.
Sure.
And obviously in invulnerability and flight, we don't see any other Superman type powers from him.
We also have a female alien, a forearm version.
Yeah, a Tetraman.
And I don't know. I think she comes off as like the Wonder Woman of the group.
Yeah, I certainly got that impression. I'm pretty sure she does somewhat resemble Wonder Woman slightly, because she has the not quite a tiara, but she has something on her head, not quite a helmet either, but
yeah,
she's wearing something on her head, and although now I think about it, she has more of a Supergirl type, or maybe an Amazon type outfit, because she's got the wrist braces as well. There is actually a detail about Tetramans that is added a lot later on, that female Tetramans are actually stronger than male Tetramans. And the later show that actually reveals this information doesn't go in like a left wing liberal SJW direction with it, because the show that reveals this information was before that. I think it was like 2012, 2013. So it's before all that started happening in various TV shows. Because they also mentioned that I believe it's how Tetramans get married is by, or who they like choose to get married to is by the male Tetraman defeating the female Tetraman, and then then the female Tetraman then chooses that specific male to marry. Although I don't know how choosing someone to marry based on if they can defeat you, I don't quite understand that.
Well,
maybe it's just a warrior thing, I suppose.
There is that element to it, but you could also imagine a naturalistic, natural selection sort of situation. Who do you want to have children with? The strongest, because your children will be the strongest. So if the females tend to be stronger than the men, and the men and a man is able to beat you, that means he's probably pretty darn strong. So, again, valuing the strength to make sure that the next generation is stronger than the previous.
This episode also has the return of the bounty hunter 666. He's the purple guy
Right.
who I mentioned as looking like Boba Fett, or at least being very similar to him.
We also get in this episode more of an expansion of Ben's first, his childlike desire to be a hero, right? The romanticism of being a hero. But as the show goes on, we also see again his ability to look outside the box and go, look, you got all these crazy rules. You're limiting yourself. You know, there's more at stake here, you know?
Yeah. I also like that they very easily could have gone in the direction of having this like character that's obviously meant to be Superman and then portray him as like not like as if the main character is better than the supposed Superman type character.
Right.
But they didn't go in that direction. Probably because this show came out when Superman was still portrayed correctly and was still somewhat popular.
That's true.
Since it was more than likely a Ultimos and the Galactic Enforcer was more than likely a lot more of a loving nod to the real thing rather than a cynical attempt to tear down the real thing.
Yeah, imagine that. But yeah, so we have some potential allies that he can possibly encounter again in the future.
Funny enough, in season 3, we will actually be seeing the Galactic Enforcers again very briefly.
I figured we probably would.
Sadly, we won't. Sadly, it won't be related to current Ben, but future Ben.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So yeah, good episode.
Yeah. There's also one thing it's probably more to do with the fact that I'm slightly younger and I watched some of the other shows at the time. During this episode, the guy voicing Ultimos here is Professor Utonium from Powerpuff Girls.
Yeah, I was looking him up on IMDb specifically because I'm like, man, that voice just sounds so familiar. And I expected to see a bunch of, I don't know, older cartoons or like other things from Adult Swim maybe or something like that.
Yeah.
And I didn't see a lot of that, but I don't know. Maybe he just sounds like somebody.
Yeah. Because when I was watching the episode, there's a part when because the 6-6 and this other criminal called Volcanus, that both of them are looking for I believe it was iron, except they don't call it iron because they don't because like they're not from Earth, so they don't know it as iron. It's the same material basically. And they have I think they call it element X. And I like the way that when Ultimos is like filling Ben and Grandpa Max and Gwen in on what's going on, he like very like when he's saying what they're after, he like calls it element X. There's like an emphasis put on the like the name element X when he says it. And I suppose if you never saw Powerpuff Girls or have any knowledge of that show, then that probably would come off as just a random moment of him saying it, very like putting a lot of emphasis on that. I mean, the show itself points out the fact that there's no idea why he's putting emphasis on the phrase element X.
Yeah.
But that's like a reference to Powerpuff Girls, which obviously the voice actor was in that show.
Gotcha.
Because that's basically the Powerpuff Girls themselves were created by various materials, and then a chemical called Chemical X accidentally going into the mixture and creating them.
I see.
And it's like a similar name, Chemical X, Element X.
Yep. Gotcha.
How original.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's a reference for people that would have seen that show as well. But yeah, that's kind of cool.
I mean, calling something like something and then X isn't technically a new unoriginal thing, because I'm pretty sure back in like the 60s or something, one of the Godzilla movies was also, or the American version was called Monster X, I believe it was.
Sure.
Well,
Heck,
I think it was something Monster X.
even Batman 89, Smilex.
Yeah. So adding X onto the name of something isn't necessarily like more recent, unoriginal.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, and I just remembered this Superman pastiche, I suppose we'll call him.
Mm-hmm.
He even has like the one specific element as like a weakness. In this case, chocolate.
Yeah, I caught that. Yeah, that was and of course you do get the other member of the team, so enraged, like, Ben has attacked him or something like that. It's like,
Yeah.
it was a mistake. I didn't know he was vulnerable to this.
Yeah. And I also like the fact that when after he's eaten the chocolate, it doesn't just like weaken him, but he's actually physically smaller and more frail looking.
Right.
And he's like a slightly paler as well.
What I didn't see is how he got fixed.
Yeah, I have no idea.
It's like at one moment he's laying down on the ground all shriveled, and then at the end he's big and buff again. It's like, what, did it wear off? Because they said he was poisoned.
Yeah,
I would imagine. I mean, it was food that he ate. Maybe he just passed it and got better or something. Like after it out of his system, it got better or something.
Yeah, that makes sense. Good point. Or there's some sort of an antidote on their ship or something like that. You know?
I think he turned back to normal while they were still on the ground.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I would lean more towards it just like passed through his system and then he got better.
Could be.
So there's probably alien poop in that pit somewhere.
It's always alien poop, right?
Yeah. Next episode is Camp Fear. So this is the one where where both Ben and Gwen are talking about birthday,
right? Because there's also a pair of twins that
who also like, I suppose the exact opposite of Ben and Gwen.
Right. And what is the value of characters like that? It not only is a contrast for the audience, but hopefully the characters pick up on those differences too and are able to learn something from it. And that's exactly what happens here. Even it starts with Max pointing it out to them, saying, look, can't you be a little bit more like them? Can't you be, a little bit more appreciative of each other, and so on and so forth. And eventually when it almost kind of swaps around, and the twins are at each other's throat and Gwen is like chastising them because she's getting frustrated, she realizes, oh, okay, yeah, this is how we've been.
And also I like the also this is near the end of the episode, but when Ben goes out to try and save Grandpa Max, and Gwen tries to go with him and help, and he points out that just because they share everything else doesn't mean they share the Omnitrix.
Right.
And instead of like coming back with an argument, she just like accepts what's going on, or not what's going on, but she kind of accepts that that's the way it is.
Yeah.
Because I do like the fact that they actually have them somewhat get along in that moment.
Right.
And this episode has killer mushrooms.
Yep.
Which have two mouths on their chest or stomach or whatever that is.
Right.
I do like the design of the killer mushrooms. Yes.
To me, this felt like kind of a throwback to, there was a lot of stories in the 70s that dealt with killer mushrooms, whether it was, there was a Japanese horror film that was like, people would eat these mushrooms and they become like human mushroom hybrids, and then their goal was to get other people to eat these mushrooms and stuff like that. And I just remember a whole slew of stuff in the 70s that was like that.
Given that's the 70s, would that be like a drug reference thing? Or a drug abuse, maybe?
Possibly. I also felt like there was always this kind of a weird way that people tend to look at mushrooms, because they're not human, they're not animals, they're not vegetables, they're some kind of something else entirely, and yet
Yeah.
we treat them as food.
Yeah. And also, where is it? Yeah, this episode is well, after Grandpa Max has been captured and Ben goes after him. Well, he first attempts as Wildmutt and he doesn't quite get to him, and then he tries again as Accelerate
Mm-hmm.
and zooms past all the obstacles.
Mm-hmm.
And when he gets to Grandpa Max, he then times out and turns back, and then gets captured himself.
Yeah, this was the episode that kind of got me thinking about that whole limitation thing. And I was like, these seem like very short limits, whereas in previous episodes they seem like really long limits. Why, but ultimately, I don't really need to focus on that too much, because as we see later on, he ends up being able to overcome that limit.
Yeah. Although there is somewhat of a theory that maybe Ben can kind of resist turning back to some extent. Maybe that's why the time feels slightly different.
Perhaps, yeah.
There are a few instances where he starts timing out, but he very quickly needs to do something. So then he does that, and then he turns back.
But then again, there's the episode where he's flying and he changes and he starts to plummet. It's like,
That's not good.
If there's a time where you can't afford to change right now, it's when you're flying.
Yeah. There definitely would be some kind of uncomfortable moments. Like if you turn grey matter and go into a pipe, that's definitely a time where you don't want to time out and turn back.
Right. Yeah. Or when you're flying so that you plummet to Earth, or
And also with a later episode with Ripjaw's the water guy.
Yeah, if you're underwater and change back, and that did, you're right, that did happen to Ben. So
yeah,
that's a problem.
So we get a new alien, which is Wildvine, the plant guy. Now I think he turns into Wildvine. I don't think he intended to turn into. I think it's more of a case of that he's around living plants and mushrooms.
It's the need of the moment.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a case where they're the same species necessarily, because the big blob thing controlling the mushrooms, not controlling, but I think he calls itself mycelium.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that thing. It's clearly not the same species as Wildvine.
Yeah,
actually, it's kind of a mystery if that even is an alien, or if it's just like a mutant or something that's just evolved underground naturally.
Right, and there's also they kind of play fast and loose with science here, because as I pointed out, mushrooms are not plants, not at all.
Yeah.
They are as different from plants as animals are from plants, and yet it is able to communicate with plants because plants.
Mushrooms are food.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
Mushrooms are food. But and that's
I suppose
the other.
we could have some kind of exception for these, because these clearly aren't normal mushrooms.
True. True.
And apparently Ben wears his socks enough until there's a hole in them.
Yes.
Melissa says mushrooms are fungus. That's true. They are.
There's a fungus among us.
Actually, they do point that out in this episode, something about funguses.
Right. Because
Ben's using
the secondary important part of the story is that athlete's foot is a type of fungus, and how do you treat athlete's foot? With a fungicide.
Yeah, so I suppose we can think of mycelium as a giant fungus, because this powder stuff, he does use that to defeat mycelium.
Yep. And when you're at summer camp, there's a couple of things that you always have to worry about. You have to worry about sunburn, and you have to worry about athlete's foot.
Okay, we went to different camps because as Girl Scouts, we never had to worry about that.
Yeah, well, we did a lot of hiking, and our feet got wet a lot, and yeah. That was summer camp.
Yeah.
So again, that was another thing of Ben being clever, thinking outside the box, realizing fungus. Hey, you got that athlete's foot powder?
That was a lot of powder they had in those cabinets.
Well,
yeah, because they opened the cupboard and there's just like rows and rows of them.
Yeah, I thought that was a bit overkill, but it again, I'm going to say that
plot point.
Well, yes, but I am going to say that if you are at a summer camp, you're going to have Band-Aids, you're going to have your basic first aid stuff, but you're probably going to have a lot of sunblock, you're going to have a lot of aloe, and you're going to have a lot of anti-fungicide.
Yeah. I also like that near the beginning when they first like drive into the park and everyone's gone and there's like food on the table and it's still warm. Mm-hmm. I do find it funny that when the lights go out briefly and Grandpa Max turns on a torch and like Gwen's standing there by herself and you just see Ben's at the table eating the food.
Yeah.
Yes. Which is kind of
gross. I mean, I would probably do the exact same thing.
Right. It's like, well, it's here.
And it's still warm.
Yeah.
But somebody else had already started eating that.
Although I will say that again, at the end of this episode, we get another flash of Max being weird with food and serving them pizza with mushrooms on it. It's like, did you ever consider that right now might not be the time to serve mushrooms?
I mean, I would still eat the pizza anyway because I do like mushrooms on my pizza.
Pizza, mushrooms, yeah, I get that.
And I'll eat pretty much any pizza, even if it did involve killer plants trying to eat me. I would probably still eat my mushroom pizza after like an experience like that.
Well, I would say there's also a catharsis to that. It's like you tried to eat me, you son of a,
Yeah.
I'm gonna eat you now.
Okay, is that everything for this episode? Yep. Okay, Ultimate Weapon now. Actually, is this the order that you've watched them in?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, because I know there's like a slightly different order to some of these episodes. Not sure why. I think that's something to do with like the production versus the air dates and everything.
That makes sense.
Yeah, because I think because this next episode will be Ultimate Weapon, and then depending on where or how you watch it, it'll be Tough Luck. Then They Lurk Below, but I've obviously watched them the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so in this episode, Grandpa Max gets a message about a mask being found.
Yeah.
Well, that's related to Mayan Aztec temple, I believe it was.
Yeah, and he becomes this is something he's apparently obsessed with.
Yeah. I mean, the show does do a good job of establishing not necessarily visually a history between it, but like implying a history, because Grandpa Max does mention that him and the plumbers were searching for this mask for, I'm not sure how long exactly. I don't know if he specifically said a day or if he just said like just a few years or something.
Well, I think the important thing is what they're framing is the implication is that the reason they're looking for it is because it's so dangerous you can't allow it to fall into enemy hands. The irony here being that in partaking of trying to, find this thing to keep it safe, you're also leading the bad guys to it. But there also seems to be the implication that it's almost like the One Ring, right? Like, you want to keep it away from the bad guy, but it also has a corrupting effect on because absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah. Although we don't see that effect with Ben and Gwen, so it might also be more of like Grandpa Max's history of trying to search for this.
Yeah, that could be it too.
Well, the thing got me is that it was guarded by this big icky bad. So how was this an issue, really?
Oh, you mean?
But then he's still trying to get it.
Yeah,
the sword
I
thing.
believe they say it's the what is it? Mayan god of death in the underworld.
Right, but he's guarding the thing, so it's
Yeah.
all good.
Yeah, it's like it's already guarded. Leave it alone.
Yeah.
You know, don't fight the guardian if you want it to be guarded. And that was the other thing too. They get into this fight because they're trying to get to it before the other guys do.
Yeah, the Forever Knights.
Yeah, and it's like another returning characters.
Who had dark sabers?
Yeah, who had dark sabers, right? And what happens? You end up in a 3-way fight, right? When what it should have been was, if anyone was at all clever, they would say, "Hey, we're on the same side as God of War or whatever here. Hey, he's trying to get that thing. Let's stop him. Quit fighting between ourselves." No, none of that. Nothing clever like that.
I suppose you could say Grandpa Max was blinded by his obsession.
Yes, absolutely. And we see that very clearly when he is more concerned about going after this artifact than he is about protecting his grandkids.
Oh yeah, because there's like multiple moments where both Ben and Gwen, like, they notice that Grandpa or Max isn't acting quite the same.
Yeah, and they finally call him out on it.
Yeah, because I think an earlier point is Ben almost falls off the edge, I think, into this big pit thing here.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was a different hole in the ground. They never actually frame it whether or not it's like this exact same hole in the ground or if it's multiple. But Ben almost falls in while he's holding the mask, and then Grandpa Max grabs him and pulls him back, and we see him like holding Ben.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and then he's like, "We almost lost the mask." It's
right.
Like,
yeah.
Douche. Worst grandpa ever.
At least for this episode.
Yes. Man, DC
One thing that
EF would be all over that.
Yeah.
One thing that I noticed when Ben is pushed into this like endless pit, I noticed this pattern along the side of the pit going like all the way down. I'm just thinking, so were the Mayans like, did they dig this hole and then just painstakingly go down and like put this pattern all over the pit going all the way down? Like, that must have taken like forever to do.
Or is it an artifact of the way that it was dug? In fact, was it even the Mayans that did it? Is it possible that whatever this god creature is some sort of an alien, and it was dug by these aliens?
And those could be the striations from the digging equipment.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because the only way I could think of it is that they didn't dig all the way down and then do the pattern, but rather did the pattern as they were digging the hole.
Could be,
yeah, there's something.
And we also have right at the end when Enoch grabs this sword and pulls it out, and then it just suddenly crumbles to dust in his hands. And that, for some reason, that's what snaps Grandpa Max out of his obsession. Well, obviously, Ben and Gwen kind of chastise him for this beforehand, but like he doesn't like properly let go until the sword itself breaks to pieces.
Yeah.
And there is, in like the behind the scenes notes on this show, there is a thing where they mention that even in this in this show's universe, where aliens and monsters and mutants exist, sometimes legends are just legends, which I don't feel like is a good enough explanation as to why the sword crumbles to pieces. I like to think that it actually is a really powerful weapon and is guarded by a god, but instead of it being like not a real thing, but rather it just is really old, and that's why it crumbles.
The thing is, it's a sword, so it's metal. So the only thing it would have was a little bit of metal fatigue, maybe some rust. But
but it's also of alien origin, so maybe it's
and
not.
Also it's in an area that doesn't appear to be exposed to the outer atmosphere or air, outside air that often.
And who knows if it's not some sort, might be another protective thing. This is not meant to be taken by anyone, and if it is, chemical reaction, destroys it.
Yeah, because I know swords can definitely look, or still maintain their appearance if you keep them in like an airtight seal.
Mm-hmm.
That way they don't rust, because they can't. Is that everything on this episode?
Yep, I think so.
Oh, I'll add this one last thing. I find it funny that Ben and Gwen are not surprised in the slightest when they're told that the sword is being guarded by the god of death and the underworld, or at least for the Mayans. Like they're not surprised in the slightest when they see this thing.
Well, and
they've seen things.
Yeah, they've seen enough things to know that, yeah, maybe this is not, as uncommon a thing as we think.
Yeah.
It's like that whole meme where Batman chastises Robin. I can't believe you believe in the Easter Bunny. For crying out loud, your best friend is an alien who's allergic to meteor rocks, and this and that, and God of Thunder, and
and multiple members of the Justice League being of alien origin or having
exactly
objects of alien origin.
I'm gonna question the Easter Bunny, really?
Especially since in the DC universe, I think most legends and myths are all real.
Well, depends on the point of view. I mean, because they've established Santa Claus, right? Because there's been interactions with the different superheroes and whatnot. But in the whole Vertigo storyline, all of those myths exist in dreams. So there's that element of it too.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's everything. So next episode, which is They Lurk Below, which is probably one of the only episodes where Ripjaws actually gets to be the primary alien that Ben turns into. Because this is probably the only episode underwater.
Mm-hmm.
Which this episode's in the Bermuda Triangle, which I think they mentioned something about these robot squid aliens being potentially the reason ships and planes and stuff crash in the Bermuda Triangle.
Right.
But I don't know if that's the specific, or at least for this universe, if that's the specific reason why. Because these squid monsters, they can't fly. They can only swim in the water and jump out of the water. So a specific height.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's been an issue for Ben too, where he's the fishy one, and then he doesn't have any water around him, so he's gasping, trying to get air because he needs water.
Oh yeah, because he can't breathe outside of water for very long. That's actually another instance of the Omnitrix not having a feature that it should have, because the Omnitrix is supposed to provide whatever alien Ben turns into with whatever they require to be in the environment they're in. So if they can't breathe outside of water, then it's supposed to provide them with a breathing apparatus so they can breathe. Or if they if whatever their species requires outside of their own environment, the Omnitrix is supposed to provide them with that when he turns into them, but it doesn't do that for Ripjaws. Because later on, when Ben turns into other aliens, there's also another aquatic alien that requires something that can't breathe outside of a certain environment, but that alien does have a breathing brace on it. But I think that's more to do with the fact that the Omnitrix has recalibrated itself at that point, so that anything it's supposed to be doing, it does then. Also curious how Grandpa Max knows the guy who's building this underwater park or resort or whatever he calls it, because I'm pretty sure he has nothing to do with Grandpa Max's old plumber days, because he doesn't know anything about that.
Right.
So I'm very curious how they know each other, or how long ago they knew each other.
Well, this kid was smart. It's like, yeah, I know Max is the one who saved us, because he disappears and suddenly there's an alien thing.
Yeah, it does seem to be a riff on the whole, Superman Clark Kent thing, right?
Yeah.
I guess it's only Lois that's stupid.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there are multiple comics where they do try to explain why people don't know Clark Kent and Superman are the same person.
And I think people way overthink it, because the reality is it's pretty simple. When you're that close to it, it's easy to overlook.
Yeah.
If you know, well, I mean, just even, if you just think about it with Ben, right? The idea that this great big powerful alien, that's Ben. I'm really supposed to believe that. You have to hear the thing talking, and what it requires him to call her a name, that is just so Ben, that it would get her going, wait, Ben,
Yeah. Actually, that's kind of something that was somewhat in the last episode of season 1. It's when Vilgax is hunting Ben himself.
Mm-hmm.
He never sees he only sees Ben when he's transformed into a different alien, and throughout the episode he never sees Ben like his actual who he actually is.
Right.
Because every time Ben transforms back, it's either something's in the way so Vilgax can't see him, or he's just nowhere near Vilgax at all.
Right.
And he's already immediately turned back into a different alien by the time he is then fighting Vilgax again. So it's not until Vilgax like grabs him and then like uses his finger to then touch the Omnitrix faceplate and turn him back that he then realizes that the person he's been dealing with the whole season is actually a 10-year-old kid
who's been besting him.
Yeah. I do love Steve Bloom's performance as Vilgax in that episode, and I also like the way Vilgax like reacts when he sees that it's actually just a kid with the Omnitrix.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these aliens are hunting for. I don't think they even named the power source or whatever it is, like a pinkish purple orb. Yeah, and the robots are trying to get that back. So I'm not sure if we could necessarily call these aliens bad or evil, because we never get them actively trying to do anything bad, except when trying to retrieve what's theirs. And we only get from Ben's perspective, what he never actually knows for certain if these aliens are going to start attacking other people once they get the power source back, or if they're just going to take it back and then go back to wherever they were. I feel like there was kind of a missed opportunity to kind of comment on the fact that this billionaire took a power source from these aliens, or took what doesn't belong to him and started using it for his own purpose. They don't really comment much on that. They just sort of glance over that part.
There's a lot of Doctor Who episodes like that. Well, someone will borrow technology from an alien race, and the doctor's like, "You can't have this. This is like hurting people," and take it back or destroy it.
Yeah. I mean, we do get some resolution for this character's like the arc that he is going on, because I know throughout the episode he's shown multiple times that he is like more concerned with the resort that he's built, and also with making sure that his grandson kind of turns out more like him, because like his grandson has the same hairstyle, wears the exact same clothes. He doesn't quite act the same as him, but we do hear him say that he only wants to hear, or he only says what his grandpa wants him to hear.
And it is good that this one comes after Ultimate Weapon, because it does shine a bit of a light on that Max would have a perspective on that now.
Yeah. And here's an image of grey matter punching a shark in the eye.
because why not?
Actually, this is another instance of the Omnitrix turning Ben into a different alien than what he chose.
Mm-hmm.
And also, when he turns into Ripjaws later on, he even says to the Omnitrix to turn him into the right alien. There's also one thing that I noticed about this episode. This is probably going to be very specific to me, because there's another show that the guys who made this show, they're called Man of Action, and they made another show later on called Generator X, and in that show there were these like robotic sound effects, and I noticed those same sound effects from that show. I could hear that effect in these like robot squids whenever they were on screen.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's like I never noticed that the first few times I watched this show. I also didn't notice it after watching Generator X. I never noticed that these robots have the same sound effect until I watched the episodes again more recently. I noticed that similarity. I think they probably just used the exact same sound and just used it on Generator X. I suppose they could get away with doing that because it's literally the same company making the episode, or making the two shows.
Oh, it does make sense.
Yeah. And also there is some connection between Generator X and Ben 10. But that would require that we then watch Generator X as well for something that's only like a minor connection. So probably not going to do that, because that would just weigh you down with even more stuff to watch. And that connection isn't present in any of the Ben 10 shows, only the Generator X show. So you could literally go through the whole series and not even notice that connection. Is that everything that you've noted down for this episode?
Yep.
Okay, let's move on to the next segment. Tough Luck. And this is the second episode with Hex. Well, this is just does bring up an opportunity. What do you think of the season 1 episode with Hex? That was Lucky Girl. That was the previous episode with Hex in.
Right. Yeah, this is another one of those episodes where it's like you have a being with abilities and you're like, is this alien? Is this something other than that? Does that mean there's magic in this world? What, it does cause a bit of confusion, I think.
Yeah. Is he another Doctor Strange?
Yeah. That kind of
thing. He is a magician.
Yeah.
It is magic. And at the start of the episode, we get introduced to the character of Charmcaster, who is Hex's niece, I believe he says.
Yep.
And there's this. You might have caught this as well, but the bag she's carrying around, it's kind of like a little TARDIS bag.
Oh.
Or I suppose you could call it a bag of holding. I suppose
Sure.
It's more accurate.
Yeah.
Because she pulls Hex's staff out of it, and it's very obviously a different size. Yeah, I've wrote that in my notes.
A bag of holdings, those are cool things.
Yep.
And this is probably something I end up doing without really noticing. I have misspelt the word TARDIS in my notes.
How'd you spell it?
I've missed out a couple of letters. It just says TARD. I don't know why I keep doing this. I'm not even trying to do that. At the start of the episode, when Ben turns into Stinkfly, he pulls a trick to save the guy on the helicopter.
Mhm.
He pulls a trick that's very similar to something Spider-Man would do. He like shoots multiple with these sticky, not webs, but these like slime rope things to hold the helicopter in place. And I don't know if that's. I know the PS4 Spider-Man game. That is literally the exact thing you do in that game at one point.
Oh, cool.
Which is kind of ironic because the Spider-Man game came out like nearly a decade later. I don't really know if there was any other Spider-Man TV show or a different game that also does that, but it definitely feels like something Spider-Man would do. I also like that when Gwen puts on her Lucky Girl costume because she has the because she finds the charm that gives her luck, and she like helps Ben out. I do like the fact that once Ben flies back down, instead of arguing about who's the hero, he just like accepts her help. I do like that. It's probably one of the few times where they aren't arguing about something.
Oh, now she got to help. I mean, the same way he does. Well, not exactly the same, but she got to help because she had some sort of powers then.
Yeah, because these different charms, I believe they're called the Charms of Bazel, I believe is the name. And well, in this episode, because Gwen smashed the previous charms that Hex had, these charms are a more powerful version that are also a different color. I'm not 100% sure what the other charms do exactly. Obviously, the one anyone gets any focus is the one for luck. There's also a part where when Ben, Gwen, and Grandpa Max are while they're at a magic convention, there's like a magic act on stage, and Ben like goes up to the stage and volunteers himself as part of the magic trick.
Oh yeah,
And
then he messes with them.
Yeah, while he's in the box, he then transforms into Wildmutt and bursts out of the box, which definitely would bring a little more credibility to that guy's act, because the audience has no idea this wasn't part of the act. This also isn't the only time we're going to see Ben on stage as Wildmutt and then him transforming and it being played off as a magic trick. Because in the one of the Ben 10 movies, this same thing happens there, where Ben's on stage and he's Wildmutt, and then the curtain gets pulled down over him as he's turning back to kind of cover and make it seem like a magic trick. Well, I feel like in that movie that was probably a reference to this episode.
But can you imagine being a magician doing the magic trick, and it's something completely different from what you were expecting as the outcome? It's like, did I do that?
I suppose if you could keep your cool, you could like pass it off as if you did that. Just like pretend like that was part of the act. Although if I was in that situation, I would definitely be questioning where the kid went and if that was him. I've also noticed that
more credibility to the magic act.
Yeah. Also noticed that after after they've all been like thrown out of the room and into like this hedge maze, they find, well, they end up splitting up, and then Gwen runs into Charmcaster, and Charmcaster very quickly pretends to be on Gwen's side, so that she can then get the charm from Gwen. And I do like the fact that she appears to portray Hex, and then a little later on we then see that actually she wasn't portraying him, but she was just like thinking on her feet.
Yep. Although I do like that one line. My uncle's going to be so mad at me, isn't he?
And at the end of the episode, when Gwen gets the charm back and it's drained of all its magic, and there's actually a moment of where Ben actually is more supportive and reassuring to Gwen, because she's kind of depressed about losing her powers and then being normal again.
Yes,
And I
but
like
then you
that
see
Ben
this
doesn't rub
weird-
it in. He actually is supportive towards her in this moment.
Right, but then you see the thing flicker, so you know there actually
Oh
still is
yeah,
some
at the
power
end.
in it.
Yeah. Although I feel like Gwen probably wouldn't necessarily know how to properly determine if all the magic's gone from it or not. Because all she does is she shakes it a little bit and then just assumes that it's completely drained of magic.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and you have this at the beginning where Ben's forms and he saves a bunch of old people who are on a bus and saves it from falling off the edge. And then right as he's walking away, they start complaining and asking him to help them down.
Well, they're old; they need help.
Yeah.
Well, they just kind of bring into question as what exactly are they going to do now? Their main transportation has no longer a viable option, and I don't think these old people necessarily have the energy or the time or the patience to walk all the way to wherever it was they were going.
They'll call it Uber.
I mean, this was 2005. I don't think Uber's around yet. That just sounds like a nightmare scenario where you're trying to arrange various different taxis and waiting for them and all kinds of complications coming up. That definitely sounds like a situation I don't want to be in. Okay, now we're on to one of the more interesting episodes, and that being Ghost Freaked Out.
Mhm.
Now this one really starts very surreal and kind of creepy in a way. Because at first it just starts out as if it's a normal episode. And when Ben turns into Wildmutt and climbs up a tree to try and save a kid from being stuck in a tree, and the surrealness kicks in almost immediately when you have suddenly Wildmutt's talking with Ben's voice. And then you very quickly learn that actually it's a dream. Or I suppose a nightmare would be more accurate.
And ultimately, this is what we were talking about before. Ghost Freak is asserting his own personality and actually wants out of the Omnitrix or to take over Ben.
Yes, because he by possessing Ben and using the Omnitrix, he can, because obviously this is only a fraction of Ghost Freak's DNA, and by using the Omnitrix, he can make himself complete, or I suppose whole. I've also noticed this image here of Ghost Freak separate. He still has the Omnitrix on him, even though he's separate from Ben now.
Yeah.
And also the Omnitrix on him isn't even drawn right either. Although that happens quite a lot with the Omnitrix not quite being drawn properly, both on Ben's wrist and on his aliens when he's turned into them.
But I would have especially a good deal more forgiveness in this circumstance, since this Omnitrix is actually a manifestation by Ghost Freak.
Yeah. Especially when we get his true form here. Yeah. And then there's no Omnitrix present on him. It's definitely a very unpleasant form to look at. I believe Ghost Freak's also voiced by Steve Bloom as well. And also this is the episode where we first get the return of the circus freaks.
Right.
Which was probably not a coincidence that the episode further developing the Ghost Freak story also just so happened to contain the circus freaks. Because during season 1, and every time Ben turned into Ghost Freak, he doesn't quite act right. He definitely acts slightly different. But as I said at the start of the stream when I was stalling for time, there's definitely like a very subtle, it's very subtle, the foreshadowing of Ghost Freak's, like what's going on with Ghost Freak. It's definitely very subtly foreshadowed in season 1. And after you watch this episode and then go back and watch the season 1, the foreshadowing is a little more noticeable. So I feel like they probably should have, while they were making season 1, they probably should have lent a bit more into the foreshadowing for what's going on with Ghost Freak. Because in this episode, Ben does mention, he doesn't necessarily mention specifically the part with Zombozo, because I know he mentioned in that episode that that he even freaked himself out with that. But Ben does mention in this episode that like every time he turned into Ghost Freak, he didn't quite feel right. Where's 1%? Yeah, here's one with the well, at least 2 of the circus freaks. But I don't even remember the name of this female character. I know that this is right here is Acid Breath, and then this guy's Thumb Skull. That's probably the easiest way to remember the character, because he visually matches his name, because his hair is designed in such a way that it looks like a nail. And then we also have Ghost Freak possessing different people. I like the effect of the the cracks or the lines around the eyes, and then the pupils being purple, and then the rest of the eye being blacked out. And I'm not sure if you caught this, but when Ben sees the circus freaks and accidentally turns into Ghost Freak, there is like a moment where Acid Breath makes a Ghostbusters reference, because he
I didn't catch that.
Yeah, because when they see him transform, the first thing Acid Breath says is, "We ain't afraid of no ghosts."
Yeah, exactly.
And also, obviously, this fight scene also shows that actually there's multiple instances where you could say Ghost Freak's in control, because when he turns in, he says Heat Blast, but he turns into Ghost Freak. And he even says, "Ghost Freak, I didn't choose you." So I suppose that would be an instance of maybe Ghost Freak taking control.
That makes sense.
And also the moment when they're actually fighting and Ghost Freak's in control and he's attacking them a little more viciously than Ben would. I suppose the most obvious example of that would be when the Medusa hair woman, I forgot her name, when she tries wrapping Ben up and he like grabs, like phases through the floor and like pulls her to the floor and then slams her head on the floor a few times. And he does this thing where he puts his arms into Thumbskull's head and knocks him out, I think is what he does. It's not really explained or not exactly too clear what he does there.
Yeah, Ghost Freak
Did
was
you-
one scary dude.
Do you have anything else, or is this a relatively short notes for this one?
Yeah, and I didn't have a lot for this one.
Okay. One thing I will point out is the area where Ben is when he fights Ghost Freak at the end, and he pulls the curtains down to so that the light can shine on Ghost Freak and destroy him. The area they're in, that's definitely something you want to keep in mind. The visual look of the area around them where he defeats Ghost Freak, because that will come up later, or specifically in the next season.
Yeah, I did think it was interesting that the light affected him like a vampire. You know, he tried to put his hand into the sunlight and he had to recoil back because it was hurting him.
Yeah, and they even Gwen even points out that about the similarity between a vampire.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any like precedent for ghosts being vulnerable to sunlight. So I know multiple other like fictional universes will have various types of undead burn in daylight. Like how when you play Minecraft, zombies and skeletons will burn in daylight, and or actually anything classified as undead in that game will burn in daylight. And I was thinking, obviously, ghosts are a form of undead. Maybe that's the kind of angle they're going for.
Well, there's also the idea that because of the nature of a ghost, you don't see them in sunlight, because in direct light, they're completely obscured. That doesn't mean they go away. That doesn't mean they cease to exist. It just means you can't see them.
Actually, I just thought of another theory as to why Ghost Freak specifically burns in daylight. Because when Ben transforms into Ghost Freak, he's able to fly around in daylight with no problem. And then when Ghost Freak separates himself from the Omnitrix, then he's vulnerable to sunlight.
Right.
I'm thinking maybe the Omnitrix is protecting him during
Could be.
daylight,
Yeah.
or maybe the fact that he's not a full ectonorite, maybe that's why he burns, because he's not complete. He's only a part of another species, of another being.
Yep.
Well, like Ghost Freak had said, being in the human shell protect him from sunlight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because when Grandpa Max later on brings a sun gun with him, and he like tries shooting at Ghost Freak, he then quickly flies into Thumbskull, and it like keeps him from dying. Although I feel like that's still going to be deadly to a normal person, because having like a beam as bright as the sun shining in your face, that definitely can't be healthy.
Well, it's probably not going to kill you outright, but
Yeah,
you might have to be concerned about skin cancer,
and also blindness as well.
possibly blindness and cataract. Yeah.
Maybe the circus freaks could be immune to that, considering they're obviously not normal people.
True.
Yeah, only 2 more episodes left. Okay, yeah. Next one is Dr. Anmo and the Mutant Ray, which sounds like the name of a 50s sci-fi film.
Yeah.
That was probably what they were going for, though.
So this is again a throwback to characters from the first season.
Yep. Technically the first villain of the, what I suppose Vilgax would be the first villain, but Dr. Animo is the first villain Ben encounters after getting the Omnitrix.
Yep.
And he's the crazy animal experiment genetics guy.
Yeah. Mad scientist. We get to see the return of the giant frog.
Yep. And also this episode also acts as somewhat of a way of explaining some of the features of the Omnitrix. Because at the start of the episode, Ben detaches the faceplate from the Omnitrix, and we get a big flash of green light. And then, right in the morning after they wake up, some of the alien DNA from the Omnitrix has infused itself into the mud, and then turned a few like various animals into like kind of alien hybrids. Like you have a couple of worms that look like stinkfly, and also has the side effect of fusing a couple of Ben's aliens together. Like when he first transforms, he turns into a hybrid of stinkfly and forearms.
Yeah.
Which isn't as strong as forearms and can't fly for very long. So he's like, I don't know if he is like super strong still, or if he's like just I think it's stinkfly's weight and strength, or forearms is weight, and then with stinkfly's strength, maybe.
Yeah. Well, it's more. I got the distinct impression that both forms were underformed, so he didn't get the strength of forearms, and his size was too large for his wings, so he couldn't get full flight ability.
Yeah, so it's like could potentially be a positive fusion, but there's probably too many drawbacks for it to properly work.
Right.
And then later on, when he turns into another alien, and Grandpa Max even warns him against transforming because they're not sure what he'll turn into. And he turns into a grey matter diamond head mix. So it's like the size of a 5-year-old, but he's got like diamond head skin. Actually, he's not as invulnerable as Diamond Head. I'm pretty sure they're I don't know if this is accurate or not, but they're in Florida, and they're like a swamp area. I don't know if Florida has any swamps.
Yep.
Oh, yep. Lots.
All of southern Florida is just Everglades.
Okay. Wait, is there like a what do they call it? Do they, I think a gator fest they call it.
It's wetlands. It's all of the ground, all of the earth is lower than sea level, so it's a floodplain.
It's marshy.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, isn't New Orleans along that area, or is that like another state over?
There several states to the west, but it's still along the same coast. But yeah, they're basically in the same situation.
Yeah. So it's like the Gator Fest. Is that like a real thing, or was that probably made up for this show?
The say again?
The Gator Fest. Because obviously when they wake up, there's all kinds of stalls and stuff everywhere.
I don't know. There might be a regional thing, and I'm sure it's referencing something because there certainly is that kind of interest. But I have no idea if, there's a specific Gator Fest. I have no idea.
It's Florida. They probably do.
Probably, yeah. Probably something like it.
Yeah. So I like with this one that we see a crab crawl onto the faceplate after Ben's transform, because obviously Ben tried sticking the faceplate back on with chewing gum, which I feel like that wouldn't have worked. Even if I feel like that probably wouldn't have worked regardless.
Probably true.
Yeah. I also like the fact that after Ben accidentally, or I suppose it's probably not an accident, he broke the faceplate off because he was like he did have a screwdriver and he was like driving that into the Omnitrix. So after he breaks it, and Gwen and Grandpa Max come out of the rust bucket to see what's going on, he does act very much like a child would after they've accidentally broken something.
Mm-hmm.
He's like hiding it and like trying to divert the blame away from himself and also hide what's going on.
Which made me wonder why Grandpa didn't go, "What do you got behind your back? Show it."
Right.
Yeah.
Because any parent would. As soon as you see the hand behind the kid's back, what do you got? Show me.
What did you do?
Yeah. I like that. Obviously, after he attempts to fix it and that doesn't work, we then see this little crab crawl onto the faceplate and then be mutated by it and turn into a little stinkfly crab. I also like that Dr. Animal like notices this and picks up the faceplate, and then now that he has access to alien DNA, he can then start mutating animals and cross mutating them with the alien DNA from the Omnitrix, which I feel like that's very suspension of disbelief type of science.
No, yeah, I see that.
We also get this giant heat blast bat. So assume Dr. Animal doesn't mutate any other animals with the alien DNA from the Omnitrix. The only ones we see are the giant frog that he had already mutated, and the heat blast bat that he had created. Although we do see, actually another detail is because Ben's aliens are kind of mixed together, this kind of makes him immune to Dr. Animo's mutant ray, which I kind of feel like that's probably a combination of his already mutated state and also the Omnitrix itself might be protecting him, because obviously it's being
Sorry, Melissa Harris says, if Kevin absorbs the Watch DNA, why did Ghost Freak possess him if every strand of DNA has his personality in mind?
Wait, is that one of the one of the earlier comments?
Two up from the bottom. The very last one she says is heat blast, bad die, or turn back to normal.
Oh, you mean this one?
Yeah, I'm seeing the comments on YouTube. I guess you're looking at them in StreamYard, which get delayed.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I don't like about StreamYard is the comments are always delayed by a bit.
Yeah, I noticed that. Well, is it, Melissa? Troy and Annette don't know about that little detail yet.
Yeah,
and that won't come into a lot later.
Yeah, I don't know about a lot of. I've only seen it this far.
Yeah, she's getting a couple of spoilers, and I said spoilers, and she's like, "Well, I'm really excited." It's like, still, I haven't seen that yet.
Actually, I won't have that on screen, just so I'll just read it from here. Yeah, I'm not sure if Kevin absorbing the DNA. I don't know if that's necessarily him also being. That could be just a small mistake that they made when writing the episodes. Because this episode with Ghost Freak, when we learn his deal, that revelation only comes later on after Kevin has mutated from the DNA. So they probably didn't quite think far enough ahead with that one. Yeah, because logically, Ghost Freak's DNA probably should, or maybe the DNA from all the other aliens is kind of conflicting with Ghost Freak's personality. Maybe that's why it's not taking over him.
Could be.
Yeah, because even though he's the one telling him, his primary personality is still fully in control of what's going on. Because when he turns into Heat Blast and Diamond Head later on, or in that episode, we do see he's talking with his own voice, regardless of which alien he's turned into, and like he's in control of whatever form he's in. So I think it might just be the like that he looks and has the powers of that alien rather than fully becoming part of that alien. Yeah, Melissa, I guess Kevin could be immune to the effects of the DNA, or maybe insane, but I feel like that's kind of pulling from later information in the shows rather than this specific show. Oh yeah, when Dr. Animo is mutating the bat, he references Frankenstein. I'm not sure if you caught that one.
Oh, I don't know if I did or not, but yeah.
Yeah, because when he's mutating the when he mutates the bat, we hear him say, "Give my creation life."
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And of course, this episode also kind of, like I said before, it gives us more insight on how the Omnitrix works. Because without the faceplate, the alien DNA is like mixing together. So I'm thinking maybe the faceplate has something in it that like regulates the DNA and makes sure that the alien transformations remain separate from each other. Here's one of diamond matter or grey head or whatever combination name you want to come up with for that. Yeah, because when he turns his arms into blaze to try and get through the branches that they're about to crash into, he does somewhat feel pain from that. I don't think it's quite enough, like it's really severe pain, but you can definitely feel that, which is definitely different from Diamond here because he's mostly invulnerable. Although we do see his skin is able to be broken. Because in Grudge Match, the robot's blades slice into Diamond Head's arms. Although he doesn't feel anything from that. Maybe it's not specifically invulnerable from being damaged, but maybe invulnerable from feeling pain.
Perhaps, yeah.
And this is, I would imagine, not a pleasant experience at all. I mean, transformed into a stink fly slug lava thing. I'm not sure what this. I know the stink fly is definitely there because of the eyes at the front here, but the rest of it, I don't know if that's related to stink fly's DNA.
It's a slug.
Yeah, I mean it has legs on. Oh yeah, and the forearms transformation has Stinkfly's tail as well. Okay, that's about all I've got for this episode. Now we move on to the final episode.
Yep.
I'm curious how much you have to say about this final episode.
Well, again, we get a jump forward in our understanding of the lore behind and the functioning of the Omnitrix. we get a suspension of some of the limitations that Ben has been under, because now he's able to change his form within the time that he is transformed, so he can go straight from one alien to the other.
And he can just think about it. He doesn't even have to touch the Omnitrix.
Right.
That was cool.
Yeah. So the master control. This is why my theory of Cannonball being unlocked through a combination, because he unlocks master control with like a specific combination from the Omnitrix. So I'm thinking it's probably the same thing for any of the other aliens. Well, aside from the ones that transform based on like any situation he's in, or any of the transformations that are very situational in how he obtains them. And this episode is the return of Vilgax and Kevin, which are the two of his most dangerous enemies, which I feel like that's the logical next step when it comes to superheroes, is to have their most dangerous enemies work together.
Was that the enemy of my enemy is my friend?
Right.
Yeah. You like have Spider-Man fights multiple enemies, and then at a certain point, all of them come together to form the Sinister Six. Like that sort of thing. And I'm pretty sure there are other comics where, say, like Batman or Superman's villains fight him individually and then at a later point form like a super group or just work together temporarily. I feel like that's a standard superhero trope.
Oh, yeah.
I also like that when Kevin, who is still in the Gladiator ship, I am curious if the crowd is still there, because obviously Slicks isn't there controlling the ship anymore because he's dead, and Kevin and some of the other aliens that are there are still on the ship. So I'm very curious if the crowd is still there. But while he's flying around, he then grabs a chunk of ice that's Vilgax frozen in space. I am very curious how Vilgax got into space.
Yeah.
The last time we saw him, his ship blew up relatively close to Earth's atmosphere, and all the pieces of the ship came flying down to Earth. So I feel like if he was in space, then he was probably at the higher point of the ship when it blew up, and he was probably blown upwards out into space. Other than that, it definitely seemed more likely that he would have been blown down to Earth with all the other pieces.
And how did he survive all that?
I mean, Vilgax in his like cyborg form is definitely near invulnerable. Because in the final episode of season 1, when Vilgax is chasing after Ben, like nothing stops him. Basically, everything Ben throws at him just doesn't work, or doesn't work for very long. Because in that episode, Vilgax was pretty unstoppable. So I feel like blowing up and being sent into space probably doesn't seem that much, especially if he can fall from an incredible height from like an upper atmosphere down to the ground, and also survive the well, not survive, but like can take the Omnitrix's defensive feedback, sending him flying into a building. I also like that Vilgax is actually showing to be somewhat intelligent in this episode, because when he breaks out of the ice and starts fighting Kevin, he immediately recognizes that Kevin's like a mutant combination of various aliens from the Omnitrix, and then starts immediately thinking of ways that he can use Kevin to get the Omnitrix. I also like the detail that they bring along this like machine that they then use to remove the Omnitrix from Ben's wrist. And obviously Kevin's the one that does it because he's the one who's like has a connection with the Omnitrix. And even though he can kind of somewhat bypass the energy feedback or the defensive feedback that the Omnitrix gives off, it's still powerful enough to like push Kevin away somewhat. I also like that like in that moment when Vilgax breaks out of the ice, all the other aliens around him have clearly heard about Vilgax because they immediately start backing off when he breaks out.
Yeah.
In fact, even before that, before he breaks out, even after just hearing Vilgax's name, they still kind of back off a little bit. And this is also the first episode where we actually get to see the inside of the null void, or the null void, or null void. Yeah, null void. This is the first time we see the inside of the place, and it looks very Jack Kirby inspired. I can find this one. Yeah, because if you look at the actually, this might not be a good image for an example.
It's like I kind of like the whole thing. Well, if you want the thing, go get it. And Gwen throws the ball so that she and Ben can escape.
Yeah. I also like the fact that in that moment, Ben, when he tells her to throw the Omnitrix away, I like that he's primarily thinking about their own, like protecting themselves and getting out of there, rather than getting his powers back. So that definitely is very much a heroic thing of like rather than trying to get his powers back, rather than be focusing on that, he instead focuses on getting themselves out of the situation they're in, regardless of whether he gets the powers back or not. Yeah, wait, say that again.
The selfless hero.
Yeah.
Right.
I will give up my powers or whatever so that, you could survive, or, this whole thing goes away.
Okay, that's okay. No, multiple images there are spoilers for later seasons because the null void looks slightly different in one of the later shows. There's a slight difference. Okay, I guess this image is literally the only one that Google is willing to show me, which isn't very clear because it's filled mostly with Kevin and Vilgax. Oh look, Kevin's being a dick again.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, I do like the fact that Gwen actually does like pull the gun out and attempt to shoot Kevin. I'm not sure if she's aware it's not going to work, but I like that she tries it anyway. Oh, more spoilers.
Try.
Yeah. I also like that after Ben unlocks Master Control, I like seeing Ben like use all the different transformations while fighting Vilgax and Kevin. I mean, I like the speed of him like bouncing between transformations while fighting them.
Yeah, that was kind of cool.
Yeah, and also I like that when he like decides to give up the Omnitrix, like in order to save Gwen, he actually like puts his hands behind his back and like messes with the Omnitrix so that the Master Control is deactivated. Because he's like, if even though I'm going to give this up, I may as well make it slightly more difficult for you to use this. I like that he even says like, good luck trying to figure out the Master Control now. And then Vilgax just says, it's like it's child's play for a master of the Omnitrix. He's like immediately undercut his attempt.
Yeah, it was kind of one of those, if I can't have it, you're not having it either.
Yeah. I also noticed that when Ben, at the very end of the episode, when Ben puts the Omnitrix back on again, I don't know if it was intentional, but he does kind of a He-Man type moment when he's doing that, because he's like got his arm up in the air and he's got lightning all around it, or green lightning around him, and then you obviously see the silhouette of the different aliens behind him. And I don't know if that was intentionally meant to resemble like a He-Man transformation or not.
I think it was just more to say, he's got it back, and here are his aliens again.
Yeah. And then he forgets he disabled Master Control, so he can't turn into whatever alien he wants. So he accidentally turns into grey matter, and then he's thinking really hard, and he's like trying to force himself to turn into a different alien, and he can't. And that. Any additional thoughts you'd like to add?
Well, I'm thinking that there's probably a future episode where he gets Master Control back again. So that he can once again just think of what he wants to be and be it.
Mm-hmm.
That is, there is a later episode where he gets Master Control. But another thing that I'd like to add about that is the first episode of season 3 with the future version of Ben. That future, he has Master Control active and is using it in that future. But that future is it's kind of a little complicated when it comes to his future self, because every time we meet his future self, it's slightly different. Well, I suppose every time we meet his future self, it's not the same as the previous one, and any previous future version of himself is no longer the I suppose the canon future for the character, because we'll see his future self in this first show twice, but after Ben has has visited the future and seen this future of himself, it then has been changed, where he then no longer will become that specific future. I suppose it will make a little more sense after we get to the point where we meet his future self multiple times. Yeah, but I don't know if that, because the episode's called Ben 10,000. I don't know if that specific episode is listed as or when you watch it, I don't know if it will be listed as the first episode. But when we talk about season 3, I'm gonna talk about that as the first episode, specifically for what happens in that episode and why I think it should be considered the first episode of season 3. I suppose we can talk about that when we get into season 3.
Sure.
I'm looking forward to season 3.
Yep. I'll get on that.
Yep.
How many seasons are there?
4 seasons of this original show. And then the sequel show, Alien Force, that has 3 seasons. Ultimate Alien, which is the second sequel, that one has, well, I've always considered that show to have 2 seasons, but apparently it actually has 3. So there's like an awkward break somewhere in between the season. Because when you look it up, sometimes that show will be listed as having a small number of episodes at the beginning, and then a larger number of episodes near the end, and then sometimes it's listed the other way around, where the first season is longer and then the second and third season are shorter. It's really strange. I don't know why they did that, but because I've always seen it as 2 seasons rather than 3. And then after Ultimate Alien, the final show in this kind of continuity for the series, the final show is Omniverse, which has 8 seasons. Although all the 8 seasons are actually slightly shorter than previous, because they're only 10 episodes each. whereas the other shows have like 13 episodes per season, with the exception of 1 or 2 seasons being slightly longer. Yeah, well, I like that we've been able to get through all the season in about half the time that we did the first season.
Good. Yeah, because I can't do 4-hour streams. When I'm gonna have another 2-hour stream in the evening. That's 6 hours of streaming, and I can't do that on a weekly basis.
Yeah. How much time do you have?
Get to bed early so he can get up for work on Monday.
Exactly.
Yeah. How much time do you have between being here with me and then joining Agent Boomer?
Well, let's see. I mean, it's coming up on 1 now. We'll be going live at what, 8?
Yeah.
So about 7 hours, but I mean, that's still looking at 3, 4, 5 hours of streaming in a day. I just can't do that. I need to start limiting myself a bit, especially when you keep in mind that I was just streaming last night with the rewatch for 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
I had my Friday night stream for a couple hours. I gotta draw some limits somewhere.
Yeah. Before we end this stream, do you have after seeing now 2 seasons of the show, which is your favorite character?
That's tough.
Okay, so like the little one. I can't remember the name, but the little tiny.
Oh, Gray Mouth or whatever.
Yeah,
She's
Gray
so
Mouth.
Cute.
Yeah.
I wasn't referring specifically to the aliens, but like just the characters overall.
Oh, yeah. The characters themselves. I don't know. I mean, I think Gwen has a great deal of potential.
She does.
I haven't seen enough of her though. I mean, so.
But I'm digging Grandpa with his little secrets there.
Yeah. He's got a lot going for him too.
And there's still definitely plumber related stuff with Grandpa Max that's yet to be revealed.
Oh, good. So something to look forward to. I'll get season 3 ready. Are we doing that next week or the following week?
Would you say having 2 weeks between them is enough time for you?
Sure.
Yeah, so we'll do 2 weeks. So next week will be another Transformers talk. It will be part 3.
Okay.
And I've listed down for somewhere on the stream for us to talk about female Transformers.
Awesome.
And also I'm going to throw in some other stuff in there too. And then the week after that, the second week, I've not made a concrete decision on anything. I was definitely thinking of talking about the Star Wars prequel trilogy at some point, because I feel like after everything I keep hearing about the prequels, like from other YouTubers and just other people in general, I really feel like the perception of them has been warped somewhat, and I really want to talk about them. And
I agree.
Because obviously I'm someone
has swung back and forth in public opinion about those.
Yeah, because I am someone who was the right age for those movies when they were coming out. I would have been. Well, I was the target audience at that time when they were coming out. And obviously, I have the perspective of both of watching both trilogies at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be
of course, there's another topic of conversation I was thinking was something related to the Warcraft games and the Diablo games, because they're also something I really like. Well, obviously, I feel like you're not as knowledgeable about those topics.
Yeah,
either.
I know next to nothing about either of those.
Yeah, that might be a similar situation to Transformers, where I'm somewhat teaching you about it.
Perhaps.
Yeah. Although I think I might save those two for a later stream.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, we'll talk about the prequel trilogy, because that's something the more I hear people talk about it, the more I'm like, I really need to talk about these, because there's definitely a lot to talk about there in relation to what I know about them and how I view them.
Sure.
Yeah. So
okay.
Yeah, let's. Okay.